Today, we're diving deep into the International Court of Justice in The Hague. But we're not going to focus on some big final verdict. Oh no. Instead, we're pulling back the curtain on the absolutely wild, high-stakes procedural drama that blew up between two major nations long before the real arguments even got started. All right, here's the game plan. First, we'll see how a single letter kicks this whole thing off. Then we get into a fight over paperwork that isn't properly signed. After that, a surprise guest. A third country shows up and throws a wrench in the works. And then the big one, a shocking accusation of evidence tampering. Finally, we'll untangle the mystery of two documents that look different but came from the same place. Let's get into it. So, our story kicks off on February 6th, 1987. And it doesn't start with a bang in a courtroom, but with a quiet, formal letter, just one piece of paper that starts the immense, slow-moving wheels of international justice turning. And this is it. This is the letter. It's from the U.S. Secretary of State, George Shultz, and it officially launches a case about a company called Elettronica Sicula, or ELSI for short. The United States is taking Italy to the World Court, and with this one document, the clock officially starts ticking. Things move fast at the beginning. I mean, really fast. Within a week, both the U.S. and Italy have their lead lawyers, their agents, in place. By early March, the court sets up a special 5-judge panel called a chamber and lays out the deadlines for both sides to hand in their big written arguments, which are called memorials. On the surface, everything looks perfectly normal, like a textbook case of global diplomacy. But this is where the whole process hits its first big speed bump. And it all blows up over what seems like a really simple, boring rule, but one that turns out to be absolutely critical. So, on May 15th, the United States submits its opening argument, the memorial, along with 2 massive volumes of evidence. But right away, the court's registrar spots a problem. The copies of the documents haven't been certified, officially stamped and verified as true copies. And in a court like this, that's not just a minor slip-up, it's a fundamental requirement. Okay, now fast forward 2 months to July. The certified copies? Still nowhere to be seen. And you can really feel the tone from the court starting to change here. The language is polite, sure, but that phrase, "I note with regret," that's basically diplomatic code for, guys, seriously, where is this stuff? The pressure is definitely building. By the time October rolls around, the registrar's frustration is pretty obvious. We're talking more than 5 months after the first filing, and this basic rule is still being ignored. And you have to understand, this isn't just about ticking boxes. For the court, if the evidence isn't properly authenticated, its integrity is at risk. This little procedural issue has now become a real sticking point. So, while this battle over paperwork is heating up, the whole case takes a completely unexpected turn. Another country, one that has nothing to do with this dispute, sends a request that just adds this fascinating new layer of drama to the whole thing. And that brings us to this question. Can a country that's not involved in a case just waltz in and ask to see all the secret files? Well, that's exactly what the court had to decide, because in June of '87, the government of Nicaragua formally asks for everything. Every argument, every document, every piece of evidence in the U.S. versus Italy case. They want a peek behind the curtain. And here is where it gets really interesting. The United States and Italy, the two countries literally suing each other, suddenly find themselves on the same side. They team up and argue that no, these proceedings have to stay confidential. They say that releasing all these documents could set off a public debate that might mess with the court's process. So after thinking it over, the chamber agrees with the U.S. and Italy. On November 26th, they officially deny Nicaragua's request. The principle of confidentiality wins the day, and the case files are ordered to be kept under wraps. Okay, so the third-party issue is put to bed, but that whole certification fight is still going on. And that's when Italy finally files its counter-memorial, its big response to the U.S. claims. And hidden inside is an accusation that is an absolute bombshell. So let's be really clear about what's happening. Italy isn't just disagreeing with the evidence. They are formally, on the record, accusing the United States government of altering a document, of tampering with evidence. The stakes of this whole conflict just went through the roof. I mean, you really can't overstate how serious this is. Accusing another country of faking evidence in the World Court is an attack on their fundamental integrity. It's a move that threatens to blow up not just one piece of evidence, but the credibility of the entire U.S. case. So now the US is on the defensive. They have to respond to this incredibly serious charge. And their explanation, well, it reveals this fascinating backstory about a meeting from 20 years earlier, some really hard to read handwriting, and a pretty significant oversight.
All right, let's break this down. The US says that way back in 1968, after a meeting, someone's handwritten notes were typed up right away. We'll call that version A. Then, 6 years later, for a totally different legal matter, those same handwritten notes were given to a new typist. This new typist couldn't really read the handwriting and ended up typing a different summary with a bunch of mistakes. That's version B. The US gave the correct version A to the court. The problem? Italy had only ever seen the incorrect version B.
So the US defense is actually pretty simple. They're saying, look, nothing was altered, a document wasn't changed. Instead, two different versions of a summary, typed years apart from the same messy handwriting, were floating around. Italy just happened to be looking at the wrong one. And they chalk the whole thing up to merely an oversight that happened more than 10 years earlier. It wasn't some malicious plot to deceive the court, they argue. It was just a simple clerical error, a mistake. And what's so wild is that this whole thing, the fight over certifying documents, Nicaragua trying to get a look at the files, and this huge accusation of evidence tampering, all of this took place during the preliminary stage. This was just the warm-up act. The court hadn't even started hearing the main arguments about the company itself. Which leaves you with one last pretty powerful question, doesn't it? If the fight over the paperwork is this intense, what on earth happens when the real arguments actually begin? It's just an incredible reminder that in the high-stakes world of international justice, the battle over procedure can be every bit as brutal as the battle over substance. Every comma, every signature, it can all become its own battlefield.